What's up, everybody? A direct quote from this article. Okay. Arizona is on pace to never be able to close its housing deficit, a new report says. It's housing deficit, not surplus deficit. This is an interesting article I'm going to talk to you guys about because this is actually raw data. Again, you know how we roll around here, right? Raw data, no fluff, no opinions. Well, some opinions, right? But we're based off of data, not basing off our opinions. Our opinions come from the data, but Arizona is on pace to never be able to close its housing deficit, in the report says. So we're going to talk about getting hammered. We're going to talk about certain parts of the Arizona real estate market that is not doing well right now because it's not all sunshine and rainbows as it stands right now. So we're going to get into that in a second, guys. And then we're going to dive into some development stuff, guys, because that's important. We have to talk about development. Development is what drives the local economic engine for Phoenix, which then conveys to jobs and then conveys to housing prices and then conveys to income, and the whole 9 yards is all interconnected, right? So we're going to jump into that here as well, and we're going to get after it, talk about mortgage rates, where that's potentially going. The Fed has a meeting coming up here, and see how that's affecting Arizona when it's all said and done. So let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen and get rocking and rolling. So I'm going to share my screen on this article because this is a great one. It's not a major news source. This is a news source that is not well known, but it has all the data for permits being pulled or lack thereof, and what that means for the future Arizona housing market. So if I pull my screen right here, you see a new report claims Arizona will always have a housing deficit. That's a bold statement. Arizona will always have a housing deficit. Well, hold on. I thought there's a surplus of homes on the market right now. And you were correct. There are surplus homes on the market, and it is a buyer's fantasy land right now in the Phoenix, Arizona. Now, critics will say, but just wait. Don't you dare buy a house right now. You wait because it's going to go down and further. And it could. Listen, guys, I'm not saying to tell you it's not going to. It could. It's a falling knife right now. And how fast it falls and where it lands, no one knows. That's the reality. No one knows. People have opinions, but no one knows. And people act on emotion. We talked about this, but y'all should be acting on logic, okay? Logic comes from data. So here we go. Back to this article. It talks about new report claims Arizona will always have a housing deficit. Why would that be the case? Well, Arizona is on pace to never be able to close its housing deficit, a new report says. The Common Sense Institute released a report Tuesday. Stating that the state currently faces a housing deficit of 56,047 units as of the first quarter of fiscal year 2025. It gave Arizona a D grade for its housing, down from last year's C minus. A D grade is what's that for? What's that D grade for? Is that D grade for housing prices, or is that D grade for something else? Well, in this case, it's for the ability to have supply in the future. Okay. So Arizona received its worst grade due to permitting issues. Okay. Said Zach Milne, whatever say his last name, the chief economist for the author's report. Maricopa County is Arizona's largest county by population and home to Phoenix, also received a D from the Institute. Now, why are the grades so bad? Okay, these grades are bad because right now, the permitting process for the population is just not there. Okay, it's just not there. And that is the issue. Okay, that's the issue. We need to build more houses, and right now it's not happening. So this report is saying that although it is a buyer's playground right now, and buyers have the ability to come in and dictate terms, which is true when you buy a property right now, it's still going to be a problem 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, because building permits are not coming in like they should be coming in. So this is a fascinating article, guys, and I'll continue to kind of summarize it for you. We won't go through the whole thing, but it says a CSI report released in May says it takes over 300 days for new housing projects to complete their permitting, development, and final inspection process. To close the housing deficit, Arizona would need to build housing for its new population growth and then provide additional housing for its existing population. We are already at a deficit. Arizona has a structural deficit in the number of housing units that's led to pretty persistent and dramatic price increases, says this chief economist. The CSI report noted the monthly house payment for an Arizona home in the first quarter of fiscal year 2025 is $2,241, which is up from $1,045 in 2019. Okay. Furthermore, the report goes on to say the average Arizona home prices are 17% higher than they would have been if home prices had maintained their steady pre-pandemic trend. Okay. Now, this is a problem. It says right now, the CSI report notes that 88% of Arizona's 90 cities have a housing deficit. 88% of the 90 total cities in the state of Arizona has a housing deficit. Okay. Now, there is a issue between wage growth and what housing prices are currently at. And that is a big issue, right? It goes on to say that Arizona wages have gone up quite a bit in the last couple of years compared to other states. Arizona is actually doing pretty well when it comes to wage growth compared to other states. However, because housing increased so quick and so fast, this is creating still an affordability issue. So despite this, the cost of a traditional mortgage with 20% down payment has outpaced that good in Arizona wage growth. They said traditional mortgages have increased due to housing values rising and, of course, high interest rates. Okay. Now, he said one way to fix the issue in Arizona is to increase housing supply by adjusting the regulations. Okay, that would be the zoning regulations and permitting process just takes too long in the state of Arizona compared to other cities, other states. So that is an issue. Now, I'm gonna show you this part because you wouldn't believe me if I didn't say it or show it to you guys. Here he said that he noted that the current housing market has more sellers than buyers, which is different from what has been experienced in previous years. The shift in the housing market has given prospective buyers a short-term price relief, he added. Okay, i.e., it's a buyer's market. Maybe you all should think about buying now. However, here's the however. The economist said the price relief will not last long because of the structural housing shortage that persists. To illustrate, the CSI report estimates that the average home in the Phoenix metro area will decrease by 5% by the end of 2025. And then he ends it up right here, which I love. Regardless of these short-term decreases in home prices, the report noted the state's housing market long-term remains unfavorable for future buyers. Did y'all hear that? He said that this is just data from an economist regarding permitting and zoning regulations and getting things approved. And we're talking specifically for single family houses, not commercial buildings, etc. That regardless of these short-term decreases in home prices, which you heard him, he thinks, given the data, that home prices in the Phoenix area will go down a total of 5% by the end of this year. So right now, we're hovering pretty flat. We're down maybe a little bit. We'll talk about the median price point here in just a second. But he's saying, even in addition to what the Cromford report says, which is they believe right now prices will end up about negative 3% in terms of appreciation for the year in 2025. He believes, this chief economist, that it'll be a negative 5%. So even more. So if you want to time this thing up, hey, maybe you wait to the end of 2025. And if these guys are right, the prices could be down 3 to 5%, which gives you a little bit more bargaining room and affordability on your home purchase. But it's all about mortgage rates. They also warn as well. Here's the point. The last sentence, regardless of these short-term decreases in home prices, i.e. buyer opportunity, the report noted the state's housing market long-term remains unfavorable for future home buyers. Why? Because again, if rates come down, when they come down, which could be a year, 3 years, who knows? But when they come down, because we have a deficit in housing supply overall, given our population growth and our local economy, that really your ability to buy a quote unquote affordable home 2 years from now, 3 years from now is probably going to be worse than it is today. That is the takeaway from this live. But don't turn that dial. I got more stuff to cover right now. So let's share my screen and jump right back in. But I hope you heard what I said. Okay. Now let's cover the current state of where we currently stand. Okay. Right now, the Cromford Market Index is at 71.9. That is going up or down, guys. What do y'all know? It's going down. Okay. That is decreasing further from 72 and some change just a little while ago. All right. But we're at 71.9. That is not good. I can't imagine this getting into the 60s, but it's always possible. You just never know. So we're at 71.9. If you're going to time this market perfectly, maybe you wait a little bit longer. Okay. Now I'm going to take a step back and pause for a second because I got started off hot on this thing. Where are you watching from? If you don't mind, just let me know where you're watching from, or if you have any questions about this or comments and it's completely different from what I have to say, let me know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. And guys, I hope everyone had a great 4th of July weekend and you have some time to spend with family and friends and celebrate America's birthday. Okay. Hopefully, you all get a chance to do that. I did with my family. It was amazing. Went back to Ohio, my wife is from, and saw some friends and family back there. So it was a great time taking the kids back there for a little 4th of July parade and all that fun stuff. Now, back to the video. But where y'all watching from? Let me know where you're watching from. Comment below if you're watching a replay. Okay, I'm going to jump back into my screen here, and we're going to talk about the Crawford Market Index and what that means right now. Guys, look at this graph. Oh boy, that's a lot of red, very little green. That means, again, the trend is not our friend and it's going in the wrong direction. But it's the right direction if you're looking to buy at some point in the near future. If you're not, then this is going the wrong direction. That's just a home seller that's hanging out, chilling, waiting for the market to get better. You're going to be waiting a little bit longer because there's a lot of red across the board at the 17 major suburbs across the Phoenix area. Now, what did July 6th said? This is interesting. If we compare the monthly median sales price for different cities where they stood 12 months ago, an overall pattern emerges. Okay, what is that pattern? Well, for the cities with the highest proportion of luxury homes, pricing has generally outperformed the rest of the valley, like Paradise Valley, Scottsdale, etc. Single-family detached homes in Scottsdale have risen 4.3% over the past year. Okay, now, we just talked about an economist and the Crawford Report themselves saying that overall, they could see prices being down 3 to 5% by the end of 2025, making homes more affordable. But isn't it still a niche aspect of things when it comes to real estate, right? Isn't it still neighborhood, city, zip code related? It is. And so you're going to see right here in a second that even though the market's pretty flat in areas where the price point's a little higher, they've actually outperformed and the values have gone up this year. In a year that's not that banner. That's not great. Values actually have gone up. Let's continue. Okay. Cities dominated by the mid-range have struggled to stay above water. Chandler, for example, is down, but just 0.1%. The cities with a predominance of entry-level homes are usually faring less well. Avondale, for an example, is down 5.3% for single-family detached homes compared to just 1 year ago. As with all things, there are exceptions to the rule. We just talked about one. But the weakest part of the market is the low end of the market, while the strongest remains the highest price sectors. And you can see that's the case overall. Paradise Valley at 109.2. Scottsdale, number 8, at 93.6. Okay, on the index currently. Now you have Avondale, who's up actually a little bit, but they're going down minus 10%. So the Crawford Report is data driven and does not lie. So what's your takeaway from that, guys? What's your takeaway? Takeaway is that where are you looking to buy? If you're looking to buy at a mid-range area across Phoenix, is pretty flat. Still a good time to jump in there. If you're looking to buy at a more affordable area around town, Santan Valley, Avondale, Surprise, etc., that it's been hit already, and maybe it's going to keep getting hit at a bigger tick, bigger rate, and therefore that falling knife could go further, and you get a better deal by waiting a little bit longer. Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, could that still go down? Of course it could, and it probably, will, at least in the month of July, because a lot of higher end people, high net worth people, are not looking in Arizona, in Phoenix, when it's 110 degrees outside to buy a house, most likely, especially on a second home, most likely in July or even August. So there's opportunity there. You have to know where to look. And that's where we come into play. Call me at that number on the screen, 480-660-5974. Myself and my team would love to have a consultation with you and figure out where you're looking at and unpack the best areas that there may be to buy the best opportunities today in the market. All right, now share my screen. I'm going to go back here and we're going to go over a little bit more market data. So you're looking at, a macro level with some of these things we talked about in terms of the national economy, but we all know what's going on with the tariffs. We all know what's going on with the big, beautiful bill. I think most of us do. And what will that do to the housing market? Before we get there, let's cover really quick the monthly median sales price. Okay, right now that's coming in. You can see at $449,550. Guys, look even back to April here is at $449,900. Okay, now it's hovering since April until July. Over the course of 4 months, it's hovering right around $450. This is median. This is not average. This is median. Okay, so the pricing is holding pretty flat last 4 months. Now, obviously, it was up in March and then took a tumble down to April, but then it bounced back up and is bouncing along this $450,000 mark. Okay. So we're not having this crash right now. Could it get worse by the time August is reported? It could. No doubt about it, guys. You know my stance on this. I'm not going to tell you it's going to happen for sure. I can tell you what I think is going to happen based upon my 20 years of selling and seeing the average cycle every single year and the seasonality with it. But that's for you to determine at the end of the day. Let's talk about rentals real quick, guys. Guys, look at the rentals here. Rental listing counts. Check this out. That's not going in the right direction. Look at the rental listing counts. It is increasing dramatically. We're at 5,926 rentals now on the market in Maricopa and Pinal counties. And you can go back here to December 24, just about 6-7 months ago, and there was about 5,400, and it was kind of bouncing along there. And again, coming on the market, no one wants to rent around December, so you're going to have a little more typically around that time. But this is not as normal to, in July, be at 5,926 rentals. So what does that do to pricing? Well, we have the readings right here on the pricing. You can see the last 2 months, this price, these bar graphs have increased. Okay. Now, the red line shows the kind of like the median, right? The average, I guess I should say, across the board. And it's running between about 140 to 136 to 140 a square foot. But it is jumping up to that 140 for July, and it's been at 140 for June. And so where will this go? Well, I can tell you right now that if you have this kind of supply in the market for the rental market, you're probably going to have prices start to come down. And so prices have jumped up the last 2 months, the $1.40 a square foot, but I wouldn't be surprised this starts to curtail and go down a little bit, making rentals a little more affordable as well. I think you're going to see that rental rates start to drop a little bit as well. I've seen it personally with my own properties, guys, that rental rates have softened up a little bit, and they're not getting exactly what they used to get, and they're not renting as fast as they used to rent out. Less people are moving around. So that being said, you take a risk on someone who has maybe not as good of credit profile, or you hold out for someone with a better credit profile that may not be willing to pay what you received last year or the year before. That's what I'm personally experiencing, and that's what that graph right there is backing up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with rental rates in the next several months. But if you're a renter out there, even though it is cheaper than buying with the average monthly payment currently in today's market in Phoenix, you might get a gift and have it be a little bit even more cheaper in the next month or two. So maybe lock in that year lease if that's what you want to do. But if you want to buy, of course, this is a good time. I am convinced of that. Now, could it be a good time in 3 months from now? Sure. 4 months? Sure. Maybe even better. But it is a good time right now. No doubt about it. Okay. And I think that first article I showed you right here, this article, guys, is exactly what people need to hear. That it's not going to get better in the future to buy because of the lack of supply currently on the market for the long term, given the current demands for housing needs that Arizona has. Okay. And will continue to have. All right. Let's jump back over to Cronford Report. Let's talk about the active listing weekly counts, guys. You can see right now, you don't have to be a rocket science to figure this one out. But right now, you have active weekly listing counts that are going in the right direction in terms of getting back to balance, right? If this was still going gangbusters in the upward direction, we would have an imbalance, a continued imbalance of supply and demand. We already have the imbalance right now. That would make it worse. This is going to hopefully make it a little better if we can get demand up a little bit. And what would help that? Mortgage rates coming down a little bit. That would help that for sure. But this is going in the right direction. And guys, you can see that the last couple of years, it's always curtailed towards the end of the year, but usually not this early. And now it's already starting to curtail. Well, some would argue that it's because we've had such a big bump earlier on in the year. Others would say that, hey, this is a good thing, and that people are not putting their houses on the market because they know demand is not there. So they're going to hold off and wait in the sidelines. But what happens now if they're holding off and waiting too? Well, we have very little demand. Supply starts to shrink a little bit as we head towards the back half of 2025. And if rates drop a little bit, you could see some really good activity start to potentially happen because we know that people are on the sidelines. But maybe the rates don't come down. If they don't come down, we're going to see a blah, 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 a more boring market, right? And that's what we all want, right? Just a boring old market, 2025. I don't know. That's not the worst thing in the world, honestly. But guys, listen, I'm not anti-affordability. I want homes to be affordable. That helps my business out selfishly, right? Because then more people will buy homes, right? But it has to bottom out at some point, because if it never does, then no one's going to jump off the fence and get in. So it will bottom out. Trust me, I've been doing this 20 years. It will happen. The question is, When? Well, if you watch this show, we're going to try to keep you fully informed so that based upon data, not your emotion, not your friends' emotion and their opinions, based upon data, when might be the right time to go ahead and jump back in. So one of those things will be the signal the Fed gives in July's meeting. Now, there's a high probability that they are thinking they're going to drop the rate a quarter percentage point, which is going to hopefully bring down the 30-year fixed a little bit more. But we'll see what happens. You can't ever guess what Jerome Powell is going to do there over at the Federal Reserve. But let's just jump back in here because there's a couple more things I want to show you. Number of price changes per week. In addition to listings coming on the market at a less amount or less less frequent tick, you now have price reductions. Look at this, guys. It was up here. Number of listings reducing their prices. Look at this. It went from 2,964 down to 2,321 this past week. That's interesting. So either A, sellers are starting to be more realistic now and price their homes where they should be pricing them. This isn't 2-3 years ago, right? Or people are or demand starting to increase. I don't think it's the latter. I think people are getting more realistic now, slowly but surely. And that's part of this process to get the market to bottom out. Once they become more more in tune to the market and they can't get what they're asking for just a year ago, the neighbor got a year ago. Now people will jump in and say, oh, that's realistic price. I guess I'll buy it potentially. So that's part of the process, but we still have a long ways to go. Okay. Now let's jump into some development stuff. Okay. Just so you guys know, Arizona still is doing gangbusters when it comes to our resorts. Okay. Our resorts are doing great. And so you have this article here talking about that there are the top 10 resorts ranked by travel and leisure across Arizona in 2025. Here they are. Castle Hot Springs, number 1. Guys, I have not been there, but I'm going to go check it out at some point because if it's number 1, I got to go check. I've heard about it. I just haven't gone to take my family. Mountain Shadows Resort in Scottsdale is beautiful. They have a par 3 executive course, which is awesome. 9 holes. It's great. I can't pronounce this. I'm not French, but Les Auberges in Sedona, no idea. Never been, but I heard it's beautiful. I definitely heard about that. I have multiple friends and clients that have done it. Royal Palms Resort and Spa. Okay, beautiful by Camelback Mountain. Enchantment Resort in Sedona. Sanctuary by Camelback Mountain. The Ritz-Carlton Dove Mountain in Marana, that's down by Tucson. The Westin La Paloma Resort. The Hotel Valley Ho in Scottsdale. And Andaz Scottsdale Resorts and Bungalow. If you haven't had a chance to stay at one of these top 10 resorts, I highly recommend. These are all phenomenal, and there are good deals certain times of the year. This time of the year would be one of those times. Check them out. If you want to do a staycation, because maybe you live here locally, or you're coming to check it out, and maybe it's not quite the high season yet. You're coming down for some good hot weather, and you can stay there and have an amazing experience by the pool and overall. Okay, now I'm going to jump over here to what are rates doing, okay? We'll get back to some development, but I got to show you what rates are doing, guys. What is happening here? Bad news. First, mortgage rates have been moving steadily higher in July, with the average top-tier 30-year fixed scenario rising from 6.67 to 6.81 in just the first 4 business days of the month. So we were down to 6.7, okay? But the good news is twofold. First off, we tend to see slightly brisk movement in the opposite direction after experiencing a consistent trend in the other direction because rates were going down to their lowest rate since April of this year. The month of June was arguably such a trend, and it took rates to the lowest level in several months. Secondly, the more simply, apart from the last few days of June, today's rates are still the lowest they've been since late April, guys. And what is that? Well, you can see the graph right there. We are at 6.781, excuse me. Not 6.7. That was a couple hours ago, probably. 6.81 today on the 30-year fix. So that is a good thing. You can see the 15 years at 6.02 and the jumbos at 6.90. So rates are not great, but they are better than they've been the last several months. So that also could be a little opportunity to squeeze in there maybe and see what's going on. This article from Yahoo Finance I thought was good. For the housing market this year, guys, speaking of rates, it all comes down to mortgage rates. It all comes down to mortgage rates. Key takeaways. Economists don't expect too much improvement in housing market conditions in the second half of this year. So far this year, high mortgage rates, soaring price tags, and relatively low inventory have kept buyers from the market. There's still a chance the Federal Reserve could cut interest rates this year, which could help lower mortgage rates, relieving some of the high cost of home buying. So that's what this is the takeaway of this article. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but the point is, we all know it all comes down to mortgage rates. What will the Fed do the back half of 2025, guys? I know you get tired of someone saying this, but it's true. People buy a mortgage monthly payment. They don't necessarily buy the price of the house. I know they have to sign on the dotted line, but they're really buying the affordability of what that monthly payment is going to be. And once that comes down, then that is going to spur a lot of people sitting on the fence. I had this conversation with someone this morning actually about this. They're thinking about making the move, but the only reason they haven't is because of rates, because of the payment. And I said, okay, so I asked the question. So what does it have to, how much more does the price have to come down before you to jump in the game? They said probably about, I don't know, $100 more. Okay, so if it comes down like $50, is that good? Yeah, that's great. That'd be good. Okay, can you afford a $50 decrease in price? Yeah, we can afford that. So it doesn't have to be 100, does it? Well, no, not really. They want, okay, so, but point is a lot of people don't have this budget down to exact science where they know that if the mortgage is $102 less, they're in. They just kind of feel like if they can get $100, couple $100 off that price, then it makes sense. But what if somebody actually sharpened the pencil and did a budget and knew exactly what they have to spend and knew exactly what they could afford? What would that look like if you just jumped in now, knowing that right now you can dictate terms on an offer that you make on almost any property across the board? We had a client that just locked up a property over the weekend, and they got a 2-1 rate buy down, cost about $12,000. The seller paid for it. We negotiated. The seller paid for it. And they are now happy as a clam because their rate, which is I think 6.75 they got approved for, is 4.75 in year one, and it's going to be 5.75 in year two. And if rates come down anytime before that, they can refinance into a permanent 30-year fixed at that rate, whatever it is, maybe 6 or whatever it comes down to, hopefully. And they get a credit towards any unused portion of that $12,000 they did not use for the 2-year time period. Pretty cool, right? So that's something that a buyer can take advantage. Let me know if you have any questions. Call me, 480-660-5974. Okay, we're going to wrap this thing up here in just a second. A little more development because, there's some good things happening in Arizona. 9 months in, how Amazon's drone delivery service is doing in Phoenix. Guys, this is a industrial center, a warehouse. Let me blow this up for you a little bit here. In actually Tolson, in the West Valley, and they are using drones and robots, right, for delivery service. They're testing this at all so far. FAA approved Amazon's drones to fly beyond the visual line. Amazon plans to expand drone delivery to other cities. And by the way, do you know what today is? Today's the start of Prime Day on Amazon, guys. You have about 3 or 4 days of just bliss for anyone who likes to shop. Please, someone, do not tell my wife. Okay, she already buys enough from Amazon, so we do not need to be going on that and getting more encouragement from her from that standpoint. Okay, all right, KC3, what's happening? The misconception is that the Fed cutting rates this year will 100% lead to lower rates. Okay, we don't know for sure. This is true. If that will be the case, we saw the same thing last year. That's a great point, KC. And the number one thing that's probably going to keep the 30-year fix not from going down much if the Fed drops the rates is the weakness of the U.S. dollar. Right now, the U.S. dollar is not doing well. Gold, on the other hand, going up pretty good. So if the dollar stays weak, even though the Fed drops the rates a quarter point, let's say, 30-year fix may not move much because, again, of the 10-year Treasury yield. So this is all, it's a great point, Casey. Thank you for bringing that up because I guess I take it for granted sometimes that everyone kind of maybe understands that, but it is an indirect correlated effect, not a direct correlated effect. And thank you for saying that. That's a great point. All right. Now, back to my thing on Amazon. We're going to skip that, by the way, because Amazon Prime's coming up. You guys know the deal. They're delivering by drones now in Arizona. So look out, and it's going to be crazy. How do you feel about this, by the way? Do you want your package being dropped off by a drone, just like, hovering above your house? And I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It's kind of like Waymos. I'm not really the fan of the driverless car just yet. It's big time here in Phoenix, but I almost think I'd rather take an Uber at this point. I know. Maybe I'm the weird one. But something doesn't feel right about sitting in the back seat and nobody's driving your car. There's too many things that can happen in the road, in my opinion. I've seen the drivers in Phoenix. Okay, okay. What do you think? Would you take a Waymo or an Uber? Assuming the prices were equal, which I understand Waymo's a little cheaper, but if they were equal, what would you do? I'm still in on Uber and Lyft at this point. Okay, somebody convince me otherwise. All right. Lucid Shares, guys, more good news. Lucid Shares. This is good news for the local economy. Lucid Shares gain on record-breaking vehicle deliveries in Q2. There's Lucid Motors. They are based out of California, but they have a huge facility in Arizona, down in the Casa Grande area, and they're expanding with new facilities from Nikola. Nikola, I believe, went bankrupt, and they are now being absorbed. At least some of their facilities are being absorbed by Lucid as they continue to grow. Now, I don't know how this is going to happen, though, because you guys know with this big, beautiful bill, they are cutting the $7,500 EV credit for certain Americans that are under a certain income amount that were eligible prior to the end of this year. So if you're going to buy that Lucid motor or that Tesla or whatever it is, y'all should think about, checking into that and maybe buying it before the end of 2025 when that is set to go away. Okay. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Another big win for Arizona, Toyota invests $50 million in Arizona vehicle testing site. This is out in Whitman, Arizona, which is just a little suburb to the northwest of Phoenix. And $50 million is a big investment, again, to the Arizona local economy. Site has hosted 37 companies and tested 280 vehicles since 2021. And they're testing all their driver technology. Okay. That's a big investment into the local Arizona economy. Jobs will come from this, guys. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? So wage growth. We need that. Okay. American Airlines announces new Phoenix route to winter skiing destination. This is always a good thing, guys. Anytime that a major city can get another nonstop route, I'm all for it. It helps the local economy. And that is going to Sun Valley, Idaho. Okay. Destination after Boise to Sun. So Idaho. Oh, I'm sorry, not Sun Valley. My fault. Mike, I stand correction. Idaho Falls. Okay. So I don't know who, and Sun Valley. Hold on here. I was right. Sun Valley. Okay. So anyways, that's a good thing. We're going to wrap up here because I know your time is precious and I'm almost done. Honeywell Aerospace tests autonomous helicopter Phoenix. Guys, we already had the Waymo. You heard what I said about that. Now we're about to have choppers rolling around Phoenix with nobody driving them. What is happening? Okay. KC3, what's happening? Waymos are taking over. They are up to 27% market share for ride sharing in San Francisco. And I heard they just actually launched there in, I believe, Dallas or Austin as well. And then on top of it, Tesla is launching their taxi service, which is driverless cars in Austin. 2 weeks ago, I believe they launched that in Austin for the first city. So that's probably coming to Phoenix soon as well and other cities. So you're right. Pretty soon, everyone's going to be driving around with no one driving them for a car ride share service. So it's gonna be wild, right? Okay. Last but not least, this is a cool one for you sports nuts. I'm a sports guy, so this is cool, guys. Cardinals launch luxury travel experience for away games. There's the Arizona Cardinal team charter, and it's a 777, and they have packages starting at $2,500 to an away game, and it's a whole experience. You get to stay like at their hotel and all this stuff, right? And the first one is going to be this November for the away game to the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, which is a great one to pick, obviously, because there's a lot of Cowboy fans in Arizona. And hopefully they won't go on this trip. Hopefully it'll be Arizona Cardinal fans cheering on the Cardinals, right? But like I said last week or 2 weeks ago, there's a lot of people in the Phoenix area that are fans of the opposing team because it's so transient. Now it's changing in Arizona because more and more people are becoming natives, but as of right now, Arizona is still one of those newer cities across America, and so you have a lot of people who are Steelers fans and Cowboys fans and Green Bay Packers fans. And when you go to the game, it's like, man, sometimes when they score a touchdown, you don't even know who just scored because the other team is rooting hard and loud with all of their fans in the stadium. But this is a cool concept, guys. If you like the Arizona Cardinals, it's something to look into. It's expensive, it's pricey, but if you want that different next level experience for maybe yourself, your buddies, or your kids, this is pretty cool. There's a charter flight right there. You get to hop on and you have access into the team on their away trip to play whomever they're playing. In this case, it's going to be the first one, the Dallas Cowboys. So I'd highly recommend that you check out this experience for the Arizona Cardinals because they're starting to do big things on the marketing side to increase the experience and the overall fan base for the Arizona Cardinals. And I can't wait as an Arizona Cardinals fan. Now, I am a Broncos fan. Okay. I grew up in Omaha, so I'm a Broncos fan. I hope they do very well, but I am all in on the Arizona Cardinals being a Phoenician here for 21 years. Okay, guys, that is everything for our show today. I hope it was great. Remember the article. Okay, we know the market has certain segments that is starting to not do so well. Okay, we talked about that. We had some data on that. Median home price is holding pretty steady. Our key takeaways here: median home price is still steady for the last 4 months, around $450,000. But certain segments are getting hurt or hit more than others, and that's the entry-level home, more affordable areas around town. They're decreasing at a much faster rate than the mid-level to higher-end parts of the housing market across Phoenix. But you have a window of opportunity from now until who knows when, and then eventually when this turns, because it always does, it's cyclical, there will be a time that buying a house is going to be a lot harder because home prices will probably start to increase given all the great news about the local economy, high-paying jobs coming to this area, especially when people are selling from out of state at in housing markets that have higher price points in Phoenix. They'll come down here, and what we think is high, they'll say, no problem, and I'll write a check for that property or get a loan, whatever the case may be, because they're getting their job relocation and they're used to paying a certain dollar amount for a home. So keep that in mind. More to come. Watch our show. We'll be tracking this very closely. I'll see you next week on the channel right here, same time. Oh, one more thing, Stephen, what's going on? Kelly, has DOD influenced the market there with Luke Air Force Base? Not a ton. Great question, Steve. We don't talk about the military a whole lot around Phoenix because we do have Luke Air Force Base, home of the F-16 fighter pilots, and that training program. But nothing really big in terms of stimulus from the government for Luke Air Force Base specifically. Now, Raytheon is having a huge banner year so far down in Tucson with all their missiles that they are creating and the contracts they got from the DoD down in Tucson. They're going gangbusters down there. So that's a really big thing, a big jolt for the Tucson economy. But for Phoenix, not a ton of defense spending that has been poured into the economy in the last year or so outside of what normally is spent. So great question. I'll look into that some more and see if I can't find some numbers on that for next week's show, 4:00 local time right here, YouTube Live. But thank you, Stephen, for that question. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And until next week at 4:00, Phoenix, you know the deal. Keep it classy.